This lesson begins our adventure into reasoning and proofs. Remember, with proofs, we're simply trying to prove something. And to prove something, we want to get rid of all doubt. We want to be absolutely certain with whatever it is we're trying to prove. But to be that certain, we're going to need really good reasons for everything that we do. And those reasons are our properties and postulates that we've learned so far in this unit. And if you haven't yet read the notes for this lesson, go ahead and stop the video and go read those notes. If you don't, you'll miss some important items. In this lesson, we'll be discussing algebraic properties and reasoning that help us solve equations. Now, you've all worked with equations quite a bit, and some of you may still have some questions about them, and that's okay. Many of you may find them really easy to solve, but you may have actually forgotten how it is that you can do what you do. Why can you add to both sides? Why can you multiply to there or divide from there? Okay? What are the reasons for it? Well, that's what we want to discuss today. The reasons and the properties that allow us to solve equations in the way that we do. Now, you'll be surprised at how simple many of those reasons and properties are, but we still need to state them. Because if we're going to prove something to the point that there is absolutely no doubt about it, we need to be extremely clear with our reasons for everything that we're doing. Let's analyze this problem that's in our notes. Number 1, it's this equation, negative 2p minus 9 equals 10p minus 17. The instructions were to solve the equation and justify each step. Let's first just focus on solving the equation. And again, if you have trouble with solving equations, make sure you're asking questions about that so you can enhance your skills on it. You can see that it's already solved for us, so let's talk through it. We have negative 2p minus 9 equals 10p minus 17. And we're trying to figure out what p is equal to. So we first add 2p to both sides. Remember, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So we add 2p to both sides. Simplify, it leaves me with negative 9 equals 12p minus 17. I added the 10p plus the 2p. That's the 12p. But I'm still trying to get that p by itself. Right? So I combine the 2p and the negative 2p and the 10p to get the p's just on one side, but now I need to get everything else on the other side of the equation. So I add 17 to both sides. Okay. Negative 9 plus 17 is 8, and so I have 8 equals 12p. But then I need to get that p by itself to figure out what it's equal to, and so I divide 12 on both sides. 8 divided by 12 reduces to 2/3, or about 0.67. And that's what p is equal to. So that's how we would go about solving that equation. And that may have not been too difficult for some of you. Okay? But why can we do what we just did? What are the justifications for each step? You know how to do it, but what are the reasons for it that eliminate any doubt that you definitely did this correctly and that you have the right answer here? We want you to prove that to us. So let's look at the reasonings and justification for each of the lines here in this equation. So here we still have our solved equation. We found p is equal to 2/3. Okay? But let's go back to the beginning. What did we do? We first added 2p to both sides. What allows us to do that? Well, that's the addition property of equality. Okay? Notice that I'm abbreviating property of equality there. You can do that as well. POE, property of equality. Remember, because the equation, what makes it an equation is that equal sign. Okay? And that tells us a lot. If we have an equal sign, then the addition property of equality tells us that if I add one thing, okay, one term, to one side of the equal sign, then I'll also add it to the other side of the equal sign, and it stays balanced. Okay? If I add the same thing to both sides, it stays balanced, which it needs to if it's an equation, okay? Because they has to stay equal. If we didn't do it to both sides, it would no longer be equal because I've changed the balance. So the addition property of equality, which is stating that I can add the same thing to both sides of the equal sign and it stays the same, it stays equal, allows me to do that. So that's my justification because I added 2p to both sides. Same thing here. Okay? I added 17 to both sides. Okay? That's again the addition property of equality. that's telling me that I can add the same thing to both sides of this equal sign and it stays balanced. It's still equal. And then here I divided by 12. Okay? That's the division property of equality. I can divide from the same term from both sides of the equal sign and it stays equal. Okay? Again, all of these terms are in your notes and you should go back over those. So I did the addition property of equality, I did it again, and then I did the division property of equality, I divided from both sides, and then I just simply simplified, right? 8 divided by 12, okay, simplifies down to 2/3. That's just simplifying the fraction. So some of that may seem really obvious, like, oh, why do we need to state that so obvious? But that's how we eliminate the doubt. That's how we become absolutely certain that we did this correctly, is we know each of the justifications for each step. And that's also explaining our thinking. And it's being able to talk about, it's like, oh, the addition property of equality allows me to add 2p to both sides. Because if you showed someone an equation for the first time and they're like, well, how'd you do that 2p? That's what you would explain to them. It's like, well, I can add to both sides and it stays equal. Okay? And so we're just kind of giving a more specific language to that as we become more certain and try to get rid of any doubt about these problems. One note. Remember, we're not trying to relearn solving equations here. That's not what you're trying to get from this. You may need to do a little bit of work with solving equations, okay? But that's not necessarily what we're here to do in this unit. We're here to figure out how do we explain and justify how we go about solving these equations, okay? How do we give a reason for our thinking and our actions, in this case with solving equations. Let's look at example 2 in your notes from lesson 3.2 or section 2.4 in your notes. The instructions are to solve the equation and justify each step using our properties of equality that we've learned so far. Let's start by just simply solving the equation. So we have 4 is equal to negative 10b plus 6 times 2 minus b. So how do we go about solving this? Well, first I see that I've got parentheses, so I'm going to see if I can get rid of those. So I've got this 6 out here that I'm going to multiply with what's inside. So the 4 equals negative 10b stays the same, plus 6 times 2 is 12, and 6 times b is 6b. Okay? Well, what allowed me to do that? Okay? Why was I able to do that? Or what did I do? So let's write our justification or our reasons over here. Okay? Well, what did I do? I distributed that 6 through. I took 6 times 2 and 6 times b. And so that's the distributive property of equality. Okay? I distributed that 6 through, and so the distributive property equality says that as I multiply that term through, it stays equal. It stays the same. I've just multiplied it. I've simplified it a little bit. So that was the first thing I did. What would I do next? Well, let's go ahead and simplify those like terms that we have, right? We have negative 10b and negative 6b like terms. So let's combine those to be negative 16b plus 12. Negative 10 minus 6 is negative 16. Okay? And then everything else stayed the same. So what did I do there? That we could say combine like terms, or just simply we simplified. Okay? We simplify. What should we do next? Okay? Remember, we're trying to solve this equation and then just give our reasonings for it as we go. So 4 is equal to negative 16b plus 12. Well, I want to figure out what b is equal to, so I'm going to subtract 12. Okay? And that would be the subtraction property of equality, because I subtracted it from both sides of the equal sign. So negative 8 equal to negative 16b. And then I'll divide by negative 16. Okay? That's the division property of equality. Because it divided from both sides. And then what do I get? Well, I have b equal to negative 8 divided by negative 16 reduces to positive 1/2. Okay? And that was, again, I just simplified. Okay? I simplify the expression. Okay? Negative 8 divided by negative 16 reduces to 1 over 2, or 1/2. So there we have our solved equation off on the left. Okay, so that's what we did. That was our thinking. Okay, that's what was involved. And over here are the reasons for everything that we did, our justification. Okay, we did the distributive property, and then we simplified, subtraction, division, and then we simplified again. Okay? And so that's a proof for this equation, or for us solving that equation. That's how we proved what it is that we did, and that we were certain that this is the right answer, because these are our reasons for it. If you would prefer, you can just solve it all at once. So do everything over here, and then look at your reasons. Okay, what did I do? And go back. What did I do there? What did I do there? What did I do there? You can do that if that works better for you. For a lot of people, though, it's just like as you go. Okay, what did you do?